They made Cooch Boston cream.
And it looks like he's gonna like Westerns.
I'm cooking meth in the basement.
Great idea, kiddo. That's why you're so popular at school.
I want my baby back, baby back, baby back.
He doesn't work here.
There's only one small problem when you're designing a Cheeto typeface. You gotta use the other hand.
Team going like you expected?
Yeah, and so far, these teams, they've really...
It's the real deal.
Yeah.
Please welcome to the stage, co-founder and co-chairman of Goodby Silverstein and Partners, Jeff Goodby. And please welcome to the stage, co-founder and chief creative officer of Mischief at No Fixed Address, Greg Hod.
All right, wow, man, this is so surreal. If someone would have told like the 20-year-old me I'd be sitting on the stage at Cannes talking to Jeff Goodby, I'd be like, stop taking so many drugs, 20-year-old me.
Yeah. I can't remember what the 20-year-old me would have said, but I'm sure it would be cool.
So the way this is going to work is we do have questions that we've selected just so we make sure we cover everything, but we'll be loose with it. And also, this is kind of like an awkward first date between me and Jeff, because we don't actually know each other all that well before this. So you'll get to hear me learning. This is very selfish. I want to learn how you create an agency that is an icon for 40 years as one story.
And I'm going to learn a lot about making an agency now that is as relevant and cool as yours.
Well, that means a lot to me. And let's just get into the cards. I'll go first. And because there's some stuff I need to know. Okay, well, let me start with how we actually did meet informally. Jeff, when I was let go from BBDO, you were the first person, like 2 days later, to reach out to me. And I didn't know you, obviously, like we covered. I got a call from Jeff Goodby, and one of the things you said to me during that, you were very supportive and very affirmative, is that I should start my own agency. And I was like, no way. I have no idea how to do that. And we talked for a long time, and I really felt like I met a soulmate there. And I wanted to know, was there one person that inspired you, or what made you decide to start your own agency?
I just want to say, I was really nervous calling you up with that advice. I have to tell you, because I didn't know you that well. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to call this guy up and tell him to start his own agency, because I knew that you were going to get offered big jobs, and I didn't want you to take one of those jobs and compete against me. No. And
oh, you're setting me up to fail is what the whole thing was.
No, I knew you were going to get offered big jobs, and I wanted you to at least have it in your head to start your own place, and I'm so proud and happy that you did, man, really. What was the question?
Yeah, well, what inspired you to start? I know you started, 4 years into your career?
Yeah, I was only about 3.5 years into advertising. I'd been a journalist before that. So I was really not qualified. Like, you were a big star. You knew what you were doing to a much greater degree than I was. And I was making no money, so it wasn't that hard for me to start an agency. I didn't have to go, how am I going to pay myself? Because I was not making anything. But we had, Rich Silverstein, Andy Berlin, and I had a freelance account. This is something to pay attention to in life. Had a freelance account that had gotten big enough to start an agency with. It was called Amazing Software. We renamed it Electronic Arts, and it did well. And
wait, who?
They gave me a bunch of stock, which I sold and bought a grand piano with. It would now be worth like $20 million. Have a $20 million piano. but there are lessons in there somewhere. But always pay attention to the opportunity things, like what Greg's saying about that call. You know, pay attention to those opportunities when they happen to you. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, the thing I learned is that your contact list is worth its weight in gold. People were so willing to have a conversation with us early on and take a chance on us, and I think that's because, you know, you nurture your relationships now, because you never know who's going to be a long-time friend.
Yeah, the people you meet in life are what it's all about. You know, they open doors for you. Don't ever discount anybody that you meet. They bring you gifts, you know, if you pay attention to it.
I pre-selected your question. I don't know if I want that one.
Oh, do I have one now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
Or we can just talk.
What was the scariest part, and how did you overcome it? Were you ever scared?
No, honestly, you know, we started the agency under the idea of what would you do if you weren't afraid? And that came from the founders, you know, Dave LaFond and Serge Rancourt, who had started, you know, this really successful kind of network in Canada. And I knew, those guys knew everything I did and were really good at it. So I had that backing. It wasn't like I was going out just trying to figure out how to run a business, because that was the part I was scared about. I knew that what creatively I wanted it to be, but I didn't know the logistics and all the background. But, you know, meeting up with those guys and we instantly bonded. I reached out to Dave in April of 2020, and we launched Mischief in June. So it happened very quickly.
See, that's so much more professional than what we did.
Not the first word that comes to mind, but it worked.
Well, we had no idea how to run a business, and there were three creative people. There wasn't really a business person per se. There wasn't an account person. There wasn't a strategist. We all liked those things, and we all aspired to those things, but we didn't really do it for a profession. And so it was basically three of us in a room waiting for the phone to ring and going like, what should we do now? And so I learned by making a lot of mistakes, frankly. I probably was not as set up as early as you. We were very lucky to have people come to us. I mean, our creative work that we had done at Hal Riney and other places before this, I think, drew people to us. You know, people knew us. But there was another really good thing that went on. I think this kind of thing helped you too. The press was very welcoming to us. They had written about New York and Chicago like forever, and they were sick of doing it. And they were like, oh, there's a cool agency out in Portland named Wyden something, and in Minneapolis named Fallon something, and San Francisco, Goodby somebody. And they started writing about those places because they were kind of unique and new, you know? That was big.
Yeah, press, don't underestimate the power and the benefit of having press when you launch, if you can. I got lucky. I mean, it felt like I was unlucky at the time, but it actually turned out to be something good. Is when I got let go, it was like in the beginning of the pandemic, and I somehow became the poster boy for layoffs that year, right? So I was on the cover of Ad Age about getting let go. And I would have done anything out of my power to not have that happen. Like, that was not something I wanted out there. Nobody does, right? But there's a built-in story when I launched, and there's kind of already a pre-audience about like what am I going to do next in a way. So that really helped us. And when we did launch, we immediately started with good press. And one of our first hires was Ollie McAteer, who is our PR comms person, and that turned out to be the smartest move we ever made, because if you're starting out or you have an agency, your brand is as important as any brand you work on. So that would be my biggest piece of advice to anybody starting.
Well, somebody said to me recently, a very smart person, that in a day and age when consultants are no longer quite as important to running new business things, the public relations that you get, the fame that your work gets, is the way that people are attracted to you. And we're both very lucky to have these type of Meredith Villines, and you have Ollie, that are just terrific at this stuff, you know, and it makes a big difference.
There is one question I want to ask you. So I'm going to jump right ahead without going to the cards. Is if you were starting an independent agency today, would you sell, or why or why not?
I knew you were going to ask that.
Blindside.
Well, I'll tell you the story of how we ended up being part of Omnicom. We had three partners, and one, Andy Berlin, wanted to expand the company really quickly into foreign capitals and other places, and Rich and I were a little bit slower to embrace that idea. We wanted to grow, but we also wanted to make sure that our creative product was still really good, and we didn't think that those two things were compatible. And I think they are now, but I didn't know that then. And we started to really kind of split up, and Andy wanted to go one way, and the other two of us wanted to go another way, and we finally just thought, it's not going to work eventually. And I started realizing that this was something that was going to break up. I was going to end up in court against Andy Berlin with him saying that 1/3 of the company was worth this much, and me thinking that it was worth this much. And Omnicom came along and made an offer to buy the company, and I was like, well, this is a good way to value the company and kind of get out of that court case if I can get Andy to agree to it. Fortunately, Omnicom gave us a really good contract that lawyers subsequently can't believe even happened. But me too. And so it was really good. It was a good breakup. I mean, I have a tequila company with Andy Berlin, you know. So we're all friends, and that's the positive part of it. Would I do it in today's environment? I don't know. I would give it a lot of thought. You know, I'm not going to plead the fifth, but I'd say give it
some thought.
Pull me up.
Yeah, we'll have a different conversation. I will say you guys are a strong brand, and you've remained a strong brand while being part of a holding company. That's not easy to do. So I will call you if that ever comes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We work on that. That's one of the things I was going to ask you. Maybe,
okay.
You know, I know there are really good questions down there, but one of the things I was going to ask you is how do you like keep it going? Like, what makes you want to do this again another year next year and try to top the things that you've already done?
Well, I should be asking you that, man. But I think the thing is with advertising, it's never the same day twice. Every day there's like new problems. By problems, I mean like opportunities, like good things to solve.
Right.
And you just meet some really interesting people. My test is when it's time to get out is when you're not looking forward to getting out of bed in the morning, and that hasn't happened yet. So I think the thing is you got to find what inspires you and create the environment that can live.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have to have things that you're looking forward to today and next week, and I think that's really the secret of life, and it's the secret of success in a difficult business like this. Like, it's easy to lie in bed and think you'll never have a good idea again, which is what Hal Riney always told me. I'm scared that I'll never have a good idea again. I'm like, well, that's not good. I've got to get over that one. So I've not adopted that feeling. I never have that feeling. I mean, I lie in bed and think of a bunch of shit I want to work on that day, which I think is much healthier.
Yeah, I think to this day, I mean, as a junior, I used to get super excited when I was working on something and couldn't wait for it to launch in the world. I still feel that. So, you know, again, as long as that passion, if you wake up and you can't, you know, bear the thought of doing another day, you're probably in the wrong place. I mean, the way I was looking at it, and this is what comes back to like taking a chance and where my next step was, is that, you know, I realized pretty late in life that your life is made up of days. And if you're not enjoying those days, don't worry about the years. Like, you should really focus on now. In fact, I got it tattooed on my arm, Memento Mori, which means live for the now, you know.
Seize the day.
Exactly.
Write that stuff down that he just said.
I'm going to throw you another question just because
okay.
They're here. I feel bad for Ollie printing them up.
Picking the right team is one of the most critical things you can do when starting out. How do you go about it? Was it hard to get people to leave their cushy jobs to make a bet on a startup?
Oh, interesting question. Well, again, you kind of have to go back to 2020 when the world was shaken, especially advertising. And nobody knew what was going to happen, and brands literally froze. So it was a time where people were really open to new ideas and new ways of working. And, you know, my first creative hires were Kevin and Bianca. And I knew them from working at BBDO. I just knew, like, if I was ever going to start an agency, these two have every color covered. They have a range of tones. They're great with people, and they're really smart and nice to work with. And those are the qualities you want when you're starting a place. And then I had my partners, Dave LaFond and Serge. And again, a partner, Carrie McKibben, who I did not know before this. We met one time over Zoom, and we connected like that, and she became my president after one phone call. You know, so Dave and Serge had worked with her. And that, again, all this feels like it was, if I would have planned it and tried to plot it out, I would have fucked it up. But it just felt like fate was coming together at the right time, right people, right place. and it just worked. I go back and go, how would I do it again differently? And it's like, no, thank God I didn't do it my way, And one more thing is I do think the environment we were in, the pandemic, actually helped accelerate everything, because in the old days we would have had to fly back and forth to Canada, work deals. We would have just dragged it out. We put our whole agency together from strangers to launch in less than 3 months.
It's crazy. I hadn't realized that, but I told you to open an agency in the middle of a fucking pandemic, didn't I?
I was kind of.
I told you I wasn't good at business.
All right, let me go for one more. Maybe I think we have questions from the audience as well. Oh yeah, this is good. How did you attract clients coming to a small agency in the very first days? Who took the leap? I think you talked about Electronics Arts. Who was after that?
I'd like to go back to what you were just talking about a little bit, like meeting people, because I just want to say a couple of really key things besides the luck of meeting my partners who both had different skills, and they weren't like me. I think it's important to have partners that aren't like you. There's no reason to have one more of him, one more of me. It's better to have people that are different from each other and complement each other, and I was really lucky to just have that happen by chance. And we were very ambitious, okay? Like, I think fear, we can talk about that a little bit, but fear and jealousy are really important in this business. Like, I'm jealous of people like this, right? Right? Isn't that true? Yeah. And you guys, I'm sure, have some of that. I mean, you're just watching the Young Lions thing. Fear and jealousy are big. And one of the things that we did, because I'm thinking about people that we hired early on, is we actually hired a writer from Minneapolis who was winning everything at the time, Jarl Olson, whom you said you knew. And we paid him more than we were making ourselves. We were like, this is going to be a really good investment to have this guy here. And it was. He immediately raised the ambition and level of work at the place in a great way. And that's the kind of bet that you need to make, because in a way you're betting on yourself to do that.
And what was the one client that took you to that next level? You're here 40 years later, and you didn't build it off of just relationships. You must have had like a big leap.
Well, in those days, you got famous for doing TV campaigns. That's not the case anymore, always. And so, we did things like we shot a really ambitious TV campaign for the San Francisco Examiner with the publisher in it, William Randolph Hearst III. And we made him like the star of it, and he was recruiting people to be on his paper. It was all done very cheaply, but it looked great. We did two things. We hired like a great director of photography. We more or less directed the things ourselves. And we would always like put all the money into one scene of the commercial, because we didn't have enough money to actually make the whole commercial look good. So we'd go, okay, there's going to be an opening scene with a crane and a car drives through, and then, so we'd make a big opening scene, and then the rest of it would look like nothing. And that won a lot of awards, took us to the next level. And we did something that did well here. We worked for a Mexican restaurant that made fresh food and threw it away every day. So we made their commercials every day and threw them away at the end of the day. And
I remember this.
You can do that easily now, but in those days, we would get up at 4 in the morning, shoot the commercial, edit it by noontime, put it into like 3/4-inch cassettes, and then somebody would actually run those cassettes to TV stations in Los Angeles and San Francisco.
Yeah, that's how I found out about you guys. I remember that. And it sort of applies today to anybody who's thinking about this, is the value of PR. That got you so much buzz. People started talking about it. You seemed bigger than you were, I'm sure, at that point.
I can tell you that we did seem bigger than we were.
And then I think, everybody knows the Milk campaign, but before that, was there another one? Sega, maybe?
Well, Sega was so fun. You have to be a certain age to understand Sega, but yeah, but people that are 30-something, especially men, they think of Sega as some kind of rite of passage of bad behavior, and it was. We basically went out. John Steele went out and figured out that we could make Nintendo into like the goody kids, the A students, and we would make the Sega into the Hells Angels. Okay, like we're going to be the thing that your parents don't want you to get, and it really worked, And it wasn't that we were so much naughtier as a product, but the advertising was so much naughtier.
I'm going to ask one last question. I think then they probably want to jump to audience questions. So you're still, up here 40 years later, how have you culturally managed to stay true to your culture?
Well, I mean, just like you have to really be afraid of not being honest with yourself about doing things that make a difference and are really good. I think that's the biggest thing. And people in your culture realize that that's how he is. He's thinking that way. I have to think that way too. I have to be honest with myself about what I'm doing. I think the other, people ask me about, do we have a management system? And I was thinking about that the other day, and I think more of it is, the only word I can put into it is love. I love the great people that have worked with me, and I'm very lucky to have worked with them, and I appreciate them that deeply. I think that's the word I have.
I feel the same. I feel like they don't work for me, I work for them, and I feel great responsibility, and and it still comes back to I want to make sure every piece that comes out of Mischief has a reason to be and makes us all proud. So I assume that never goes away.
So true. Do we want to take questions? Is that what you're thinking? I don't know time-wise how we're doing.
Let's do it. I think Jeannie's going to help us out here.
I'm going to help y'all out. Hi.
Hi.
I'll go on this side for visual balance on the stage. All right. Hi, everybody. All right. We have a couple great questions from the audience. Remember, Cannes Lions app, if you want to plug in some more, we have time here for some questions. All right. First of all, I think this is for both of y'all. From Ravi, what is the one thing you wish you could go back in time to tell yourself when you decided to start your own shop?
No, man, I was hoping you'd go.
Shit's going to happen, Like, get over it and go to the next thing. You can spend a lot of time being unhappy about something that's not going well, or we all do things where, we're not happy with the result, and you have to have faith in yourself to do better,
Yeah, I think we had to learn this along the way, is be really selective about the opportunities, because when you are just starting out, your resources aren't that strong. You have a group of people, but to go after pitches that you don't think are right for you is always a mistake, especially when you are starting out. I do think like the first couple pieces of work will set the stage for what everyone expects from you. So the one piece of advice, and it kind of happened to us, accidentally, is make sure the client is aligned with your vision, and what you put out there will be what you become.
I so agree. If you early on choose the wrong client to go after, you waste a lot of time and money, and you lose the culture at your place. They start to go, I don't know about this guy. He just got us into that pitch and kind of sucked.
Yeah, you have to make a lot of sacrifices for culture. Like, you can't take the client for the money if it's going to hurt your culture, because that will cost you way more in your soul and your space than what you're getting paid.
Yeah, I remember pitching against Wieden & Kennedy early on for the Honda Scooters account. And we did all kinds of crazy things. We actually got a Honda scooter and hung it up in our offices by these cables, and it was really arty, piece of beautiful art, and spent all this money and had freelancers come in and work with us, and we lost the pitch. I remember exactly why we lost, because Jim Riswold wrote a commercial with just a terrific writer, and we lost the thing. Lou Reed was in it, and he says the words, "Don't settle for walking," and we lost the pitch. I mean, whatever that, don't settle for 4 words, we lost the pitch. So you learn, you can lose to a shiny object like that, by the way, as we all know, and that's a lesson in itself. But don't take on things that you're not really likely to win, and I don't think we were very likely to win that at the time.
Awesome. All right, next question. This is for you, Greg.
Okay.
So you touched upon this a bit when you talked about getting the phone call from Jeff, and it was time to start your agency, right? So, Greg, what would you tell folks? When do you know is the right time to start your agency?
When you're not excited about what else is out there. I think if you see a hole in the marketplace and you think only you can fill that, then go for it. And make sure, again, you have the right people with you. The one piece of advice I would give is like, make sure you surround yourself with the right people, and those are people who you can trust no matter what. They have the same vision you, and they're really good at the things you're not.
I love the idea of looking for holes and things out there because, you know, nowadays there are so many holes and there's so many ways to fill them. And it doesn't have to be an agency. You know, it can be a podcast. It can be, you know, a company that you set up on your own that does something nobody's doing. And there are so many ways to go. I don't think that you have to put yourself into an agency box anymore.
All right, next question for you, Jeff. You are a leader of, both of you are leaders of leaders of leaders of leaders of leaders. So question for you, how do you go from being a doer to a leader?
Well, I think Greg already said this. I tell people, you know, when you're on your way up, you're serving yourself. You got to watch out for what you're making. You've got to get well known for those things. As soon as you get a job at the top of the organization, you serve everyone else. You have to make them better. It's not about yourself anymore, and you're serving other people. And I think that if you keep that in mind, they will be incredibly loyal to you, and they'll give you their best selves, and they'll think about, you know, they'll think about work while they're in the shower, and sadly while they're driving their kids to school, but that's okay. And you know, you get their best selves to work with you.
Awesome, awesome. Greg, next question for you. Sure. Is how do you talked a little bit about having those connections, nurturing those relationships along the way. People you might meet here, you might see them again in a few years, and you have a different relationship, and you help each other out. How do you build those relationships? How do you make them grow? How do you nurture them?
A lot of it just comes through just working together on other things. But again, you're all here, so like there's some relationships being formed as we speak, and just be yourself. Don't be, you know, obviously I'm not like a superpower networker, but I think I've just made true connections that way. So just, you know, try to be yourself, be nice to people. Your reputation is everything in this business. It's a very small business and people talk. So be conscious of that. And good people know good people. So if you have friends that you trust and are in great positions, ask them to introduce you.
Yeah, this is a fabulous place to do that. So talk to the people you're with here. All right, last question for both of y'all. Final round. Sudden death. Is what do each of you hope to see from the next generation of creative agencies?
Wow. I think that we live in the middle of a stream of media like nothing we've ever lived in before from so many different directions. And I just love it when people sort of direct those things like a symphony and make something that's bigger than just one of the streams, you know, and that surprises and delights us and actually changes the way we look at life, not just at a product. So that's what I hope you do after this.
I'm going to tell you what I hope doesn't go away, and it's becoming rarer, and that is the love of creativity and ideas, and an agency built around that, because I think it's very easy to get distracted and try and come up with the next model, come up with the next technology that will do this. That's all serving the great idea. So as long as we don't lose sight of that, and we have this love, like the reason we're all here is to celebrate creativity, and it's easy to get distracted by all the other conversations. So I want to make sure that anyone who's thinking of starting an agency, if your heart is in creativity, don't feel you have to have those other things because that's the hot topic. Feel you have to understand those and use them to benefit the creativity.
I love that. I love that. I mean, that's very clear in the work that these folks see from your agencies, from the things you've produced, is that creativity is always at the heart of it. That will always be the advice for anybody starting anything new here. So give a wonderful round of applause for Greg and Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.